Suck it! I am the mastermind, the hand that holds the strings.
Come on, this has got to be the most awesome song in the series. Mastermind, the song in the Helluva Boss episode, well, Mastermind is a song of countless tone shifts and epic moments. With its combined 3 minutes 30-second runtime, it's absolutely secured itself in place for an analysis video, and thus, here we are. In this video, I'll be breaking down the intricacies of this wondrous masterpiece and breaking down the character moments and explaining the symbolisms behind the actions. So, without further ado, I'm Cryptid and I make videos of things I'm passionate about, then there's your intro, let's dive in. First off, we begin with Stolas' initial lament, and a whopping 1 second into the song and I've already picked out an important detail. It's obvious to us that Blitz will be in slight distress or shock from, nearly being beheaded, but you can see his eyes widen in an almost confused expression, though we know this isn't because of the fast pace of the events unfolding, since it happens the moment of the first few notes in the opening progression of the music. This proves to us that Blitz is directly reacting to Stolas' willingness to sing for him. The next scene we get is a shot pointed upwards at Stolas, clearly showing us how Blitz views him in this moment, above, but not in the self-absorbed, pompous way as earlier episodes. This time, he was the light that shone far beyond who he views himself as, a light that symbolizes hope looking down on him with a blessing. Next, we see Blitz's face in the background as Stolas takes his first steps towards the court. It's more than his previous expression. Before, it was more, no way he's really gonna do this, but now it's holy shit, he's actually doing it. That first step is emphasized through this expression to show the big leap in both Stolas' braveness and Blitz's perception of him. Fittingly, it's the first step to Blitz's realization that Stolas truly does love him, so much so he'd lay down his life for him. We then get this wide shot, proving to us that the previous one pointed upwards at Stolas was a mere fraction of the sheer scale of this megalopolis-esque courtroom. It's really hinting at the power dynamic here. Stolas is teeny tiny along with the rest of the main cast. Hell, this room towers over even Satan himself. Though as we'll see later, it seems he's more involved with the power scaling between him and a literal piece of architecture than we think. We are then presented with a quite theatrical couple of frames, with Stolas emphasized in his awesome singing skills with fluid, soft hand motions. Then, Andrelphus. That smug son of a bitch knows exactly what he's up to. Just the way the lighting falls onto him so menacingly, and that grin, with the raised chin and his head looking up, yet his eyes gazing down at Stolas. It's great visual storytelling the way they integrate this as something so minuscule, yet there's so many layers your average theorist could get an 8-minute video out of it. It's obvious he has a plan, but what exactly that is/was, well, that's up to interpretation. If it's the former, we may find out later down the line. Though I can say I do think he had an idea of what form of oddly specific situation would occur if he said what he said and refrained from protesting when he did. But this man deserves an entire video about him, so let me know if you're interested in the comments, and subscribe while you're down there. I forget to say that in videos. Moving on, we get this segment of Stolas wandering elegantly across these procedurally appearing platforms, but is it just me, or does the magic look too Andrelphusy to you? Oh, for fuck's sake. But seriously, the blue hue, the sparkles that almost look like snowflakes? It's clear to me, at least, that this is more than a simple magic trick by Stolas. Even if it was indeed him who summoned the platforms, the specific details scream overly dramatic, malevolent evil to me. Though here's a side note, Stolas' power is indeed outlined teal often, so it's likely that, you know what, let's not ruin the fun. Focusing on the lyrics, Stolas explicitly states,
Could it be that a worm such as this half a brain could concoct such a plot so sublime?
Which I'll actually argue in favor of Stolas here, just hear me out. If we think overall, the environment he's in is largely classist, to say the least. He's surrounded by folks who think they have the right to loom over the weak and enslave them into their corrupt systems. They all look down on imps especially, and by all, I mean all. Some more than others, of course. We know B cares about a species, yet there's still pounds popping up all over the place with horrible conditions and mistreatment of its denizens, so we need that explained, maybe, Beelzebub? Ozzy, granted, lightly threatens his people, though I wouldn't consider that mistreatment. He is quite involved in the inner workings of his ring and considers himself on par with the species he created, even granting them their own teleportation gadgets. Though, of course, there's a lot more to it than what's on the surface, but I felt like mentioning the two sins we've met so far is honestly prudent to justify my claim of them all being classist. Here's to hoping that things will be cleared up down the line and, you know, all that stuff. So yeah, let's move on. Stolas had no choice but to tell them what they wanted to hear. They know imps are stupid and incompetent in comparison to their sheer power, but to have it framed as, well, therefore they could never have committed such a heinous act is an awesomely written backhand against the system. Stolas is playing on their mindsets and reshaping it and what was that? I'm sorry, what was that? Stolas is playing on the mindsets and reshaping it to take Blitz out of the spotlight, though they still need someone to blame. Otherwise, who else would Satan ruthlessly punish to fund his power boner? Cool little visual moment as Stolas says half a brain. We get Blitz looking extra stupid, almost as if playing to the stereotype for a laugh, and then a hard cut to Mammon trying to figure out if pussy ends in E or Y, only then to hard cut again to the Queen of Sloth herself, Beelzebub, dozing off in the courtroom. 3 significant strands of humor all woven together to create this neat blink and you'll miss it gag for all viewers to chuckle at, and even speaking about it now, it's pretty funny. On top of that, Satan's half, I'm begrudgingly listening and I'm bored expression with his assistant Yogurt taking notes either on Stolas' awesome pipes or the fact he's leading up to some sort of reveal. Great small little detail there, and Stolas then says,
"Does this fool deserve the flame?"
which is already playing on itself since the syllable it rhymes with is very much a synonym emphasized for cohesive songwriting reasons. Though the visual addition of actual flames below Stolas as he uses the word flame to refer to flak, cool thing to note. If we peel back the onion that is this scene even further, we can infer that the idea of Stolas discussing blame while being atop a mountain of flames could foreshadow the future moment of him admitting and truly shifting the flame-tinted spotlight to him. Stolas then asks what's probably the most important question.
Or is someone else to blame?
And then covers himself with his cape Batman style, further showing us the constant inner conflict between silly and theatrical in this musical number. Now it's time for the first of many switch-ups in this song as the music becomes more intense, like that of a villain song, with alternating notes almost like an on-off switch, giving the impression of a rising crescendo. We have a lighting change here too to match the atmosphere with a demonic bleeding red tint to the area, making Stolas' bulging eyes glow a bright neon. It's a great use of hue isolation to make red pop out by using more red. In this continuous scene, the camera swiftly rotates as Stolas moves fluidly, and his melodramatic antics are shown in equal duration that we can feel the theatrical element rising with each movement. We then get this transition, which if you're unaware, I'll slow it down. The candles are actually the ones to cause the influx of flames in the scene. Originally, I thought Stolas himself summoned in the fire with his power, but it seems he used said power in a way that it manipulated existing fire and gave it this burst of energy akin to those high pressure fountains that shoot up into the air. This transition leads us to an awesome shot in the jury where there's an amazing mix between a dark area the main lighting cannot reach and amazing particle work with the green fog on this guy and the striking fire on this character. The rim lighting here too is just dopamine inducing to the max. Allow me to go off on a rant about the designs of these damn background characters just for a second. Odds are we won't be able to meet all if any of these folks, yet they look so damn good. I know Viv has a habit of allowing the artist to go crazy with the designs, particularly for the background singers in Has Been, but it seems to me a similar thing happened here. If not, and I'm completely wrong, huge round of applause to the single mind that simultaneously conspired a chubby man with a floating head, robotic arm, and fart aura, and a flaming phoenix in a tuxedo. Back to the lyrics now. Stolas is wandering around all these wonderfully designed folks and overall raising the idea of some outwardly force working from the shadows. One who knows how to manipulate and scheme without being exposed. This part of the song really makes me picture that type of image, and it's definitely helped by the way the music's structured with the factors I mentioned earlier. The constant sense of rearing up, ready to pounce, makes me feel like the mastermind, as if I'm about to be revealed. I'm sat there thinking, is there something about me I don't know about? And it somehow made me question things in that moment, mostly unironically, but the sentiment is there. We get this beautiful shot of Stolas gazing at the enchanting ceiling of this honestly huge open courtroom space. The levels of megalophobia in this image is a weird concoction of beauty and fear. And can we just comment on the lava waterfalls? Lava falls? visuals. They're so detailed and add an extra layer of depth to the atmosphere, quite frankly one of the largest reasons why this thing seems so large. We also get this quick glance at the head honcho himself's throne, with the spiky design almost reminiscent of corrupted wings, once elegant and rounded, now contorted and sharp. And also the apple representation here too, a little biblical knowledge there. The great detail in these backgrounds, you know. Mammon fails to spell the P word, but has full certainty in how to spell the C word, let's just say it's instinct. He's also super offended by Stolas ruining his masterpiece, which, honestly, I would too. Not to play devil's advocate for the third time in a row in these videos, but Stolas, you should never mess with a man's building blocks. Though right after, he swiftly wanders over to Leviathan while asking so many questions I can't keep track, but it basically boils down to this mysterious mastermind figure, and perhaps he's out there committing further atrocities, but some would say he may even be in the same room, eh? Also, side note, pretty epic to see Leviathan's second head here show this level of bioluminescence that pops out from the demonic red of the courtroom. I really hope we delve into this particular part of the character later down the line. Stolas transforms, beautifully mind you, and his transition form has this sharp, almost beak-like edge that darts around like a bullet. He then plays once again into this Batman if he was in theatre attitude with the cape and all. And look at Ozzy's face right now. Pretty much sums up all of our expressions at this point. Just plain confusion with so many layers, each layer is still pure confusion. Beelzebub then pops up, but she seems less than impressed with his antics, almost a semblance of disappointment. I mean, Stolas is putting on a good show, yet insulting an imp and taking the spotlight with the harsh idea that the trial was meaningless because they got the wrong guy. And the further implication that he knows who this guy is yet won't reveal it gives off a negative vibe to say the least. Stolas transforms again, this time into a huge bird boy, and look at the frame right before this. Big broad Ozzy struggling to stay seated with that blast of wind in his face, yet then there's B, whose hair is barely blasted to the side as she just sits there with the same expression. Oh, what a contrast. But yeah, back to Stolas' demon form. We've seen it before in Truth Seekers, but seeing it now gliding through the aforementioned enormous courtroom is one hell of a treat. There's some eyes visible here too on the pillar, and that made me realize that throughout this entire song there's been eyes in the background that constantly stare at Stolas. Whether because he's the focal point of the scene, or they've seen everything behind the curtain and know what he's been up to. Adding on to that, I genuinely love the transformation animation. I think it's the way he looks like he's in a cocoon holding back and then bursts out of it with such force that he flies high into the air. Just a level of emphasis I can totally get on board with. So much force, in fact, that Belphegor woke up. I mean, hats off to you, Stolas, that is truly impressive. Ozzy's face! And thus, our beloved demonic bird floats back down to Blitz with this oddly weighted animation. If you're unaware, weight is one of the most important parts of making a character feel alive and proportionate to the world. Take, for example, complete opposite side of the spectrum, Transformers, where each part is weighted as they would be in the real world. This leads to transformations and movements that feel metallic and heavy due to the weight of the parts involved. Here, Stolas in his full form glides with speed, yet nowhere near the level that he would be able to in his regular form we see earlier in the song. The animators truly understood the heaviness of this form and made that evident through those few frames of him catching the air before landing. This is then combined with the landing itself, where the talons meet the ground, followed by the body, then the first half of the wings, then the second half. This segmented pose helps us, the viewer, truly feel the gravitas of this character and their importance in the scene. We see this later in the song with Satan too. The tone then shifts again to the second verse, where a lyrical segue is used to transition between the two. Stolas mocks Blitz, further showing us his dedication to the act he's putting on, though he uses his insult as a way to simply emphasize the characteristics these blind higher-ups see the imps as. He knows they're arrogant and narrow-minded, so he appeals to them some more, though with a subtle call out to them. In this scene, we can see the feathers flying through the wind caused by Stolas' landing, and notice their colour, red. They're obviously from his demon form, which is inherently seen as villainous and evil as of this song, though they change later when he reveals more of himself rather than this devilish character he's playing at the moment, so keep that in mind. The question he asks is genuinely an interesting one. He asks the court why they were planning to simply execute the imp and get it over with, or as Stolas says,
Pat yourself on the back, close the case. Let this this imp take the blame, take the fame, let his name...
Insinuating that this was the wrong decision, because of course there's a force out there so much more powerful and overbearing that they're failing to acknowledge. Another point he raises is the idea that this decision is wrong in more ways than one. Stolas explains that the public execution of an imp would be nothing but bad press for the members of the court. All it would do is enact a spark of hope in the lower class, a hope that they can overcome and rebel against these tyrannical leaders for their bashful decisions. I do believe Stolas is correct, since the light placed upon Blitz by the time of this beheading is a positive one. He argues loudly and passionately, embracing the idea that he is innocent and only trying to do his job, a genuine point he raised to defend the rest of the crew, which works in his favour. So by this point, the audience at home is well aware that IMP are morally innocent due to the shit society these guys curated, forcing them to do dubious things to rise up and make a living. Stolas simply expands upon it, yet from a royal's perspective, which is held in higher regard due to the intense classism of this community. The next scene details Stolas walking across this rocky platform, though this time it seems angular. There's a slight incline as he walks, which could mirror the musical production. As the music slowly rises at an incline, so does Stolas visually, as at the end of the day, he's the one to kick off the crescendo. Now we lead into the next chorus and big reveal as Stolas sings dramatically, stating that it's his duty to spill the beans on this mysterious master.
Fuck it! I am the mastermind, the hand that holds the strings.
There it is, he's the mastermind, and we get a wonderful wide shot as he opens his arms, almost as if the camera's working in tandem with him to say, hey, this is the scale of effect I hold, that wide view emphasizing that colossal reach. The grunge is then introduced in Stolas' voice to symbolize the grittiness of a villain and his master plans. He describes himself as
the hand that holds the strings,
a clear reference to a puppet master. Think of how Satan and the kings in the room feel when a prince admitted to holding this secret that none of them were aware of. Satan himself jumps out of his seat in enrage when he hears this. And by the way, the irony of Stolas considering himself a puppet master when he's built like the puppet from FNAF. There's also this frame of Stolas with his hand out before he swiftly balls it into a fist. From the camera's perspective, it's as if he's holding Satan in the palm of his hand and crushing him. This is more evident when Satan rises from his chair after Stolas retracts his fingers. It could be foreshadowing that they're going to beat his ass somewhere later in the series, though it could equally be the opposite. Stolas then says,
no simple imp of mine could master the disaster.
Clearly noting the class difference there once again, to put himself up and seem like a bigger deal that this whole fiasco went on without anyone's knowledge bar from idiotic Stella. When he puts Blitz down and pushes himself up, it conveys to me that Stolas knows these people and how they think, and this is what he must do to make this scene, well, a scene. He also calls it a disaster, which could suggest how he feels deep down about the truth of the situation. Not him lending Blitz the book to do illegal things, but the process that was involved to achieve that. We know how guilty Stolas felt about using Blitz throughout all their arrangements, so mentioning it now, with little to no resolution up to this point, it makes sense he still hurts, as does Blitz. Not only that, he says,
oh, it stings that you thought,
which on the surface seems like a segue into the lyrics to move the song along, but the placement of it being right after he mentioned the disaster just makes me think he's still hurting inside, which to me makes perfect sense. Then, one of the most awesome rotating shots in the show, as Stolas throws everything he has at them through a direct call out with a semblance of snide towards the elites for not coming to this realization earlier. He's mocking them for admitting, practically saying, well, you couldn't work it out for yourself, so I'll do it for you. And the fragile egos in the audience will quiver in embarrassment. And that moment where he says it stings pops out to me as his eyes are closed, giving us a sense of deeper connection between the words he's saying and how he actually thinks internally. It's as if there's a semi-twist in that sentence, as before his interjection, he says it stings and his eyes are closed, though he turns it around with that you thought and his eyes open again to show he's calling out the courtroom as opposed to airing his own dirty laundry in public. It's these small details that lead me to think the next season isn't going to be all sunshine and rainbows. There's flaws to be addressed, as there always is in this show, to be fair. fair. Though what I believe truly proved my point about the inner symbolisms is the next sequence. Stolas explains he has no regrets as the lights remain red and villainous, though through some voodoo magic or something, an awesome transition sequence leads us into this cosmic setting. Aside from the visually stunning design, the light is a blue-red gradient. This shows us the divide between Stolas and Blitz. They're opposites of each other. One is alone and thirsts for comfort, whereas the other one is far from it, yet forces himself to be through pushing everyone away. It's a tale as old as time. Red versus blue. Ultimately, they always clash in the middle, which is practically a summary of the Stolitz relationship. Two separate entities who are drawn to each other through a single common affliction that rises above the rest. What is that exactly? It's love! Aww. But the red-blue symbolism is something I always find awesome in Helluva Boss, particularly in this sequence, and obviously Look My Way, which has a ton of that stuff. This cosmic area is a rendition of Stolas' true thoughts. It's where he goes to when he seeks comfort, and when Blitz is nowhere to be seen. Look My Way was all about him getting the crystal, meaning up to that point, he couldn't call Blitz to hang out. He was too afraid of confrontation, so he defaulted to the cosmos, exactly where he is now. This is his final safe space, where he's not shrouded in ignorance of his thoughts, but at peace with them. This is why the first thing he says is a contradiction to his last sentence. It's how he truly feels. But how does this prove my point of eyes closed equals fighting his feelings? Well, he closes his eyes tight as he says this, yet eases out as he realizes the place he's in is free of judgment. The courtroom is very literally the town square of judgment, and this sequence is the complete antithesis, a way to show the contrast between the two locations. Not only that, they're also complete opposite in colour as well. Another thing I noticed is the fact that Stolas is blue and Blitz is red. To me, this details clear as day how they both react in times of distress. Blitz fights back and responds with outrage, which is obviously connotated with red, as red is considered to be an angry colour. Blue, on the other hand, is the complete opposite, being regarded as intense sadness, with the saying "I'm feeling blue" being prevalent still in present day, being prevalent in present day. This matches Stolas, who responds in upset and melancholy in times of distress. We do see this mirrored though when Stolas fights back against Stella in episode 1, or Blitz cries his eyes out in episode 10, so there's more nuance than simply what's on the surface. Another thing I noticed is the particles in the background. They're mixed. The reds combine with the blues and drift together across space, and seeing as this is Stolas' mind temple, I interpret this as being how Stolas truly wants things to end between the two of them, how he wants to live. This is up to interpretation though, so feel free to respectfully debate it in the comments along with any other points made so far. Next up, Stolas quizzes himself on why he'd even bother risking his own life for Blitz, and that's when Blitz himself chimes in and seconds his statement by asking,
I would rather be dead than live life without you by my side.
Highlighting his still very evident self-esteem issues and corrupted sense of worth. When he says this, we get a shot set behind Blitz of him looking up at Stolas once again as his guiding light, and I just see it as incredible how the view of him from Blitz's perspective has changed so much since episode 1 of season 1. Stolas comes to the conclusion that without Blitz, his life has no meaning, which is sweet at first, but quite depressing considering he doesn't consider anything else worth living for, not even his own daughter it seems. I've said before, but I will reiterate, if I were to pick a side to be on, it would be both and neither. They've both done shit things to each other, and opinions can be raised about that, but ultimately, the most important thing to me at least is to hold both of these fictional characters accountable for their wrongdoings rather than fight about who's more in the wrong. Just my opinion though, obviously debate. Stolas then suffices that his life is worth laying down for Blitz's sake. Blitz tries to protest, clearly admitting he doesn't deserve this and that his life isn't valuable enough, but that's been talked literally to hell by this point, and in his attempts to stop Stolas, the illusion is broken through the chain swooping in to stop him from going any further. We then get this beautifully recolored section, and remember when I told you to hold on to that color of feathers thing? Well, here it is. The lighting is quite heroic, and the feathers floating through the air take a similar appearance. They're almost mythical, glowing bright yellow, the color associated with sunshine and happiness, but also heroism. This shows a positive spin in the narrative as the colors are more cool and calm, though the yellow is gifted the ability to literally shine through in this regard. Stolas is the ultimate hero of the episode it seems, and the framing here represents that. Stolas goes off rationalizing this whole thing to, well, I'm in control of my destiny, so this must be it.
I am the mastermind, the master of my fate. Sure, shined. I'll give my life to clean your slate.
Since seriously, in this moment, it's the thing he feels most drawn to do and almost wants to do. As he says himself, he's the master of his fate and can do as he pleases from his actions. And through this belief that it's his own will that commits this, no pressure from an outwardly force, no other blame to be shifted, he feels confident. Meanwhile, Blitz is being absolutely hammered with these feathers that gloss over the camera as he says exactly what he's thinking. He sees himself as not only below in his ability due to the injustices he's faced and the harrowing experiences he's been through, but his own cognitive state as he blames himself for not giving even a second look to the idea that perhaps Stolas does indeed love him. It's understandable though, low self-esteem can obviously lead to a world of issues and an overall ignorance to positivity surrounding him. Moving on, Stolas uses the phrase "sure as the stars have shined" in relation to the certainty on the sacrifice he'll make. This is truly an empowering sentence, man. The stars have shone for literal eons and have made their presence known and concrete for just as long. This shows us the sheer lengths he's willing to go to for the person he loves and knows he's screwed over so many times. There's obviously a tear between the opinions of Stolas here, as Blitz is in favour of Stolas' life being more important, whereas Stolas believes the opposite. He makes this evident through his next phrase,
I'll give my life to clean your slate. You're my light.
Which he says while a pink cosmic mist glides past, pink obviously symbolising love. Blitz responds in the most honest way possible, actually shedding a tear at the realisation that there's no better place to say this than now. The two harmonise together, essentially pulling a till death do us part, and there's a wondrous crossfade sequence as this happens, very reminiscent of 80s punk music videos. Notice how Blitz finishes his note before Stolas, giving that more natural layered effect over the instrumental. Beautiful. After that, godforsaken Satan rocks up with his rude interruption and tone-shifting attitude. He immediately takes control of the room, all the royals bow down to him and become this ironically church-esque choir, instilling us with such a damn awesome level of goosebumps that you just can't hate. He reprises the chorus with an evil spin, and we see segments of him rising from the throne menacingly, giving off horror trope vibes, where the villain is not yet revealed and we only see segments of its likeness. As he actually steps up from the chair, good old Yogurt smiles like Adam, first man next to die, as if this was his evil plan all along. Also, he's using a candle-lit pencil to write despite being a candle-headed demon himself. Is that racist? Anyway, ulterior motives, am I right? His feet stomp viciously, and I mean viciously, as you can literally feel them through the screen thanks to the sound effects and damage shown in the visuals.
And here I am, the law.
He's obviously the fucking law. I mean, he's Satan, Lucifer's depresso espresso blah blah blah. But I must say though, that shot of him rising is sex. As I said in my Satan analysis, the deadly sins kiss his ass with an equally ass-kicking harmony that combines with his deep voice. Man! Satan lies through his teeth, secretly seething that what he said isn't true because he believes it should be for some reason. But I will say the VFX with that flaming seraphim is sick, and the symbolisms of it being an angel that got caught in the fire of evil and sent to a flaming dimension for the rest of time, beautifully done. And thus, I will say a lot of the stuff from this moment forward I've covered in my Satan analysis, which will be linked in the outro, so we're going to stop here if that's alright. I'll give y'all the freedom to dissect this final sequence yourselves in the comments. Just remain respectful and all that crap. Make sure to subscribe and click the video on screen, it's my Satan analysis. If not, YouTube chose the other one for you, so don't blame me if it's dire, and yeah, stay positive. Gabba!